have a confession. I've avoided challenges because I was afraid of what others would think when I failed, afraid of what I would think of myself. But when I stopped to truly consider it, by not taking action, I was guaranteeing failure before even starting. I've been leading teams for over 17 years, and I regret that at times, my fear of failure held me back from living out my values, both at work and at home. I've been working to get to the root of my fear in order to claim ownership over my life so that I can do the hard things that matter most to me. Hi there, I'm Anne, and in this video, I'm going to share the core concepts that help me to unpack my fear and the 3 strategies I've used to overcome it. This video wouldn't exist if it weren't for these very strategies that help me to push past my fear of failure. So, what does fear of failure really mean? Let's start with the word fear. Fear is our brain's way of keeping us safe. But with failure, the threat isn't physical, it's emotional. It's about our identity. That's why we procrastinate or make excuses. We're trying to avoid the shame or embarrassment that might come with failing. Even though we know that mistakes help us grow, they can still feel really terrible, especially when we tie our self-worth to success. I'm not proud to admit that I've abandoned goals just to protect my sense of self. But when I started seeing fear as my brain's way of protecting me, I stopped beating myself up. I began to show compassion for that scare part of me. More on that later. For me, fear of failure is almost always connected to perfectionism. Perfectionism usually starts in childhood and gets reinforced by culture or upbringing. As perfectionists, we're often hard on ourselves, even when we do well. We procrastinate not because we're lazy, but because we're scared that our best just won't cut it. At its core, fear of failure is really the fear of judgment, ours and others. One of the most powerful ways I learned to work through it is to show myself compassion. I dive deeper into self-compassion in episode 2 of this series, but here's how it connects to perfectionism. Dr. Kristen Neff is the author of Self-Compassion, and she says that refusing to accept mistakes is really just a deep desire for perfection. That hit me hard. When I shared this realization with my daughter, she replied instantly, "Oh yeah, like how you couldn't accept that mistake on Duolingo earlier today." What? She was right. That moment showed how deep my perfectionism ran, even in small daily frustrations that had zero impact on my life. For me, perfectionism is about control. My parents had to work 6, sometimes 7 days a week to provide for our family, and as the oldest child, I took on a lot early in life. I thought if I worked harder, I could avoid failure. But resisting failure doesn't fix the past, it just drains me. On the other hand, accepting it lets me focus on what I can't change. That's taking real responsibility. Understanding the roots of my perfectionism helped me to see that younger version of myself with more kindness. She was doing her best. Research shows that people who practice self-compassion handle failure better. Instead of shame, they learn, they grow, they build resilience. Self-compassion means recognizing that being human is hard, and we all deserve kindness, especially from ourselves. If you struggle with perfectionism like I do, self-compassion can be a game changer. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to catch the episode I made on this topic. I'll link it at the end. Sometimes failure isn't about making mistakes. It's about expectations not matching reality. I felt like a failure because things took longer or felt harder than I thought they should. I've caught myself thinking, this shouldn't be so hard. I should be better at this by now. A friend called this shitting all over myself. Angela Duckworth's book Grit shifted my perspective on effort and talent. It introduced me to something called the naturalness bias. This is the idea that we admire effortless talent more than hard work. Society loves the myth of natural-born talent, but research shows that grit, which is sticking with something long-term, predicts success much better than talent alone. For example, growing up, I believed that great singers were just born that way, and I never tried to improve my singing ability, even though it had been a lifelong secret desire. I had been holding myself back, thinking that because I wasn't naturally talented, it wasn't even worth trying. But after I read Grit, I was inspired to finally take singing lessons. It's been over a year now, and while I'm not American Idol material, I'm thrilled that my vocal range has increased more than what I thought possible. I'm curious to see how much more I'll be able to continue to improve with time and effort. Knowing that grit matters more than talent doesn't make effort easier. I still feel frustrated when progress is slow. But I've learned that failure isn't about how long something takes or how many mistakes I make. It's about whether I keep going or not. The people who succeed aren't necessarily the most talented or perfect. They're the ones who refuse to quit when the going gets tough. Whenever I'm feeling stuck or discouraged, I remind myself of something I once heard. Success lives on the other side of the moment you want to give up. Keep going, you might surprise yourself. Before I dive into the strategies I've used, there's one last concept I want to touch on: the fear of what others think and how it can prevent us from taking healthy risks. This one's big. It probably deserves its own deep dive, but even briefly, it's worth bringing up. As a recovering people pleaser, I've spent way too much time worrying about how others see me, especially when it comes to making mistakes. I'm still working on it, but here are a few realizations that have helped me to start letting go more often than not. The biggest realization is that when someone has a negative reaction to me, 99% of the time, they're projecting their own stuff, just like I sometimes do. That idea was reinforced when I read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. He expands on this concept in the chapter on the second agreement: don't take anything personally. It's a short, powerful book, and I highly recommend it. This idea was further supported when I started to notice patterns at work. Why did I get along really well with some coworkers, but not with others? Sure, personality plays a role, but I wasn't trying to make friends with everyone. I was just trying to do my job. I noticed two things. First, the people I struggled with usually had similar struggles with others. It wasn't just me. The second thing I noticed is that the things that triggered them often reflected the insecurities that I shared. So I started focusing on my own triggers, and when I could do that, I was way less likely to take the bait when someone else reacted negatively. Now, just because I wasn't reacting didn't mean that they stopped, and when that happened, all I could do was let them. Mel Robbins' book, The Let Them Theory, helped me to really lean into that idea. If someone reacts poorly despite my best efforts, I can't control that. What I can do is let go and let them make the choices that they're going to make anyway. This includes passing judgment on me. Easier said than done, I know, but here's a bottom line. The only thing I can control is how I show up. I can be intentional about my actions and my responses and release the rest. And honestly, it's been incredibly freeing. Now, you might be wondering, but Anne, shouldn't I listen to the feedback from others? It depends. When someone provides feedback, the first thing I ask myself is, would I go to this person for advice? If the answer is no, I just let them say their piece and thank them, or not, and move on. If the answer is yes, I would go to them for advice, and I ask myself, is this helpful? Even if I trust someone, that doesn't mean that I have to take their advice or adopt their opinions. They don't have the full picture, my priorities, my circumstances, the choices I have to live with. If the answer is no, it's not helpful, I thank them, and this time actually mean it, and move on. Not letting the opinions of others, especially about my failures and sometimes even about my successes, get to me isn't easy. I still struggle with it, and I probably always will. I'm human after all. But in those moments, I lean into my self-compassion. It gives me the kindness and strength I need to keep moving forward in the best way that serves me. Now that we have a better understanding of the fear of failure, I want to share the strategies that have helped me to overcome it. The most important strategy has been strengthening my growth mindset. This is basically the antidote to the fear of failure. With it, we value progress even when we fall short. We see others as mentors, not as judges or as competition. A fixed mindset, on the other hand, focuses on protecting our image. We might ask, am I good enough? What if I fail? We avoid risks, feedback, and help. Failure feels personal, like it defines us. If any of this sounds familiar, here's the good news. We can build a growth mindset, which is why when I started this channel, I use the Growth Mindset Workbook by Dr. Elaine Elliott-Moskwa. It combines mindset research with cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT strategies to help rewire our thinking. CBT is based on how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors influence each other. Traditionally, it's practiced with a mental health professional, but research shows that self-help CBT, like workbooks, can be effective for certain challenges. A powerful insight I gained from the workbook was that a fixed mindset often acts like a habit, triggered automatically in certain situations, especially when we perceive a psychological threat like the fear of failing. Failure can activate the body's fight, flight, or freeze response, making it harder to think clearly. Dr. Elliott-Moskwa identified the 6 most common situations that can trigger a fixed mindset. Facing a tough task you care about, struggling when a task feels harder than expected, judging your progress, making mistakes, receiving praise or criticism, especially from authority figures, and comparing yourself to others. It's scary how accurate that list is. My fixed mindset was triggered by nearly every single one of those scenarios while working on this video alone. When a fixed mindset kicks in, our self-talk shifts. Do any of these sound familiar? All or nothing thinking, I'm either amazing or a total failure. Effort negativity, if it's hard, I must not be talented. Perfectionism, anything less than perfect isn't good enough. Mistake magnification, this mistake proves I'm not good enough. Judgment from others, their opinion defines my ability. And comparisons, I'll never measure up. The first step to shifting our mindset is awareness. When I notice any of these thought patterns come up, I pause and reframe. I find it to be most helpful to write down my fixed mindset thoughts and respond as if I'm comforting a friend. For example, when I started this channel, I kept thinking, I should be further along. Why is this taking so long? Ironically, those thoughts slowed me down even more. When I reframed it to, I'm just starting, progress takes time, I started moving forward again. Another fixed mindset hurdle I experienced has been comparing myself to established channels. I'd see their polished videos and think, look how far ahead they are. I haven't even posted my first video. I'll never be as good as them. But then I was able to remind myself, most successful creators have been at this for years. I'm just getting started. Instead of comparing, what's one thing I can learn? These shifts may seem simple, but words matter. When I take the time to reframe my mindset, I've gone from feeling like it's hopeless to determination to try, no matter the outcome. Don't underestimate the power of a good reframe. But in the moment, it's tough. That's because emotions like shame or frustration usually hit before we recognize the thoughts behind them. That's where deep breathing comes in. It's simple but powerful. When we're stressed, deep breathing sends signals to our brain that we're safe, activating the calming part of our nervous system. My go-to technique is called box breathing. You inhale for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 8. Let's try it. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It usually takes me a few rounds before I start to feel calmer. If 4 seconds is too long, start with 2 or 3. By practicing it daily, I've developed the muscle memory to be able to turn to it during stressful moments when I need it most. This method is not meant to make emotions go away. I was taught that strong emotions were bad and worked hard to suppress them, ignore them, especially when it came to emotions in the workplace. But I eventually realized that doing that just made things worse and that emotions actually carry useful information. Deep breathing gives me space to hear what those emotions are saying. Dr. Elliot Moskwa created the float method for managing intense moments. Feel the shift in emotions when facing a mindset challenge. Label the emotion. I feel frustrated or I feel anxious. Observe it without judgment because it's a natural response. Accept the feeling rather than resist it. What we resist persists. Take action towards growth even if the emotion is still there. I'm not quite at the point where I can think, I'm feeling frustrated right now. How curious. I shall accept this feeling and move forward. Well, that's how I imagine it'll go down in the future. But I'm getting better at noticing, labeling, and letting go of my emotions. That helps me to respond with more clarity instead of spiraling. Combining deep breathing with the float method and self-compassion practices have helped me to quiet my inner critic. Curious about which mindset you tend towards? I've linked a free quiz in the description along with other resources to help you in your journey towards overcoming your fear of failure. But if you don't love your results, don't worry. A growth mindset isn't about where you are now. It's about where you're willing to go. If your score shows that you have a strong growth mindset, that's great, but be careful to not fall into the trap that I did. When I first read Mindset by Carol Dweck, I thought, I've got this growth mindset thing down. The quiz even confirmed it. But while working on this channel, I realized that I had a fixed mindset about my growth mindset. I didn't even know that was possible. I assumed I'd always approach challenges with a growth perspective. But with self-reflection, I noticed that even small setbacks could trigger fixed thoughts sometimes. Once I recognized and accepted this, I reminded myself that it wasn't a failure. It was an opportunity to strengthen my growth mindset muscle. See what I did there? Here's a recap. When I hit a stumbling block, I pause. I identify my emotions because they offer clues about my mindset. When fixed mindset thoughts sneak in, I use deep breathing and the float method to create space for growth and reframe for possibility, not failure. All the while, I try to hold compassion for myself because being human can be hard and we all deserve kindness. The more I've trained myself to shift my perspective in tough moments, the stronger my growth mindset has become and the easier it's been for me to adjust in the moment. Reframing isn't about lying to ourselves, as some people might think. It's about choosing thoughts that inspire progress and growth. Which thoughts might that be for you? The second strategy is creating an environment where mistakes feel safe to admit, both for ourselves and others. Amy Edmondson emphasized psychological safety in her book, The Right Kind of Wrong. It's the belief that it's okay to speak up without fear of embarrassment or punishment. She stresses that open conversations help prevent small failures from turning into even bigger problems. Blaming a single person when things go wrong, including ourselves, can be tempting, but it's often counterproductive. Don't take me wrong, taking responsibility matters, but many failures have multiple causes. If we focus on just one, we miss opportunities to learn and improve. More importantly, finger pointing destroys the psychological safety needed for growth, and this includes blaming ourselves. At work, I used to start meetings by asking my team to share a success, challenge, and focus. One day, someone jokingly said, "I don't have any successes. Can I talk about my failures instead?" Absolutely. From then on, we replaced focus with failures. It's kind of amazing how this simple shift has encouraged learning and growth, making it easier to openly share our struggles and the insights that promote positive change. Mistakes are unavoidable. Accepting our own fallibility isn't a weakness, it's actually a sign of courage. So, how about starting small? Maybe you can open up to a friend about a mistake you're struggling with, or ask your coworkers what they've learned from their missteps and share yours. Lead by example and watch the culture around you shift. The third strategy is called fear setting, a concept introduced by Tim Ferriss. He's the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. He was inspired by a Stoic philosopher who said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Ferriss designed fear setting to help himself visualize worst-case scenarios, assess risks, and develop coping strategies. Here's a set of questions that he asked himself. What is the worst that could happen? How likely is a worst case scenario to occur? What steps can I take to replace the damage if the worst happens? What are the potential benefits of taking action despite fear? And what is the cost of an action compared to the cost of taking action? Fear setting provides clarity. Instead of fixating on failure, we consider what's at stake if we don't try. That last question has been the most impactful for me. While working on this channel, my self-doubt would kick into gear on a pretty regular basis. Every time I considered quitting, I reminded myself of the cost of inaction, the regret that I know I will feel for giving up. I see this channel as a training ground for pushing past my fear of failure. There's something about how public and open it is that's forced me to go way beyond the limits that I used to set for myself. Turns out that I've been building up my tolerance for failure. I've noticed that I procrastinate much less in other aspects of my life after starting this channel. The root cause of my procrastination was my fear of failure, but after overcoming my fears on a regular basis, my brain learned that I wouldn't die from mortification. I have the experience of building up small successes that have motivated me to keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone. To build resilience against failure, Amy Edmondson suggests practicing low-stakes risk-taking. Hobbies are perfect for this. Unlike work, hobbies aren't about achievement. They're about fun and learning. They offer a safe space to fail. I think that singing lessons have primed me for launching this channel. Singing feels deeply personal because it's just me and my voice. In the beginning, I felt really vulnerable. Even now, I feel a small twinge of self-doubt before each lesson, but every time I push through, I reinforce a pattern. When I feel discomfort but still take action, I experience growth. There's no exact formula for failing well, but the more we stretch ourselves, the more likely it is that we're going to make mistakes, and that's a good thing. When we practice failing, we realize we won't die of embarrassment. Failure stings, but we survive it. We build resilience. The more we fail, the less it scares us and the more we grow. The more we face our fears, the less control they have over us. I hope you'll consider sharing in the comments one action you'll take to overcome your fear of failure. And speaking of overcoming challenges, how do you stay motivated when things get tough? The key difference between those who keep going and those who quit is their why. In the next episode, we'll dive into how to find our purpose. If the video isn't here yet, subscribe so you don't miss it. See you there.